Welcome back, YouTube. It's Brian Phillips here. Flaps installment number 3. We've got this receiver, this AR610, brought down to the bare minimum for now. And until we know which direction this is going to need to move, I'm not going to go any more off of this. But at the end of the day, my hope is, I've decided this is what I want to do. I'm going to basically have this as one contiguous piece. I'm going to have a piece of double-sided tape in there, and then these wires are going to terminate here. And the only thing I'm thinking about maybe keeping is the signal wire, and then the 2 pins, one for this channel and one for that channel, in case I would need to add something later, because I can put power off any of these lines. Now, the other thing is I need to eventually build in a connector. But just thinking along the lines of what's likely to fail is the servo. So I hate to build too much into the servo, but if I'm building on the servo with an ability to replace the servo, I can live with it. So now, without further ado, we're about ready to finally cut into this plane. And so I've got things propped up just to make things easier on me. This is always a very scary part, because you go from plane being in one piece to plane being in 2. And so the first thing you got to do is get rid of the canopy so it's out of the way. I could also take this out, but I'm going to leave it. It's not actually going to pop out. If you're using a very sharp X-Acto knife, you can sometimes get away with this. The other thing is, since this is a white plane, you're only going to really need to try to preserve the tape in this general vicinity here, where you might be, in fact, it's going to cut right there through my label, which I knew that was likely to happen, so I planned on it. Obviously I could reprint these if I wanted, but I'm not going to probably reprint them. I just want to be very prudent to get a nice clean cut and make sure I cut the right seam. Sometimes it can be a little bit deceiving, because these decals get screwed up really quick, okay? Okay, so that cut's made. This one's going to be the hardest cut because I'm cutting through paper. And I'm not going to change anything. If it looks fine when I'm done, I'm just going to tape it back closed. But you may also want to consider taking the tape off. Which in my opinion is always the best option if you can get away with it without compromising your finish. Okay, so I've cut those. Okay, so it's ready to open, with the exception of this top portion. So we're going to have to cut here, all the way down to there, through the paper. Real shallow cuts, guys. A lot of times there's a piece of foam that backs there too. Okay, so now let's see how this folds. So far, so good. Now, we have one set of wires that goes back to this tail light from the LED mod video. We need to be paying attention for. And we just want to see how this is going to fold. It looks like we're probably going to be able to leave it attached. Except we're going to have to cut either here or here. And I'm just trying to decide what's easier. Probably we'll cut it here. It's going to be harder to reapply this tape, but it's going to leave, I think it's going to leave a better, cleaner fold. It's going to make it a lot easier to work with. So use the back of the blade because it's still super duper sharp. Okay, so we're just going to let this pivot. So now at this point, the next step in my process is almost always going to be figure out a way to stabilize the aircraft so you don't have to worry about breaking it while you're working. And then secondly, this is the first time I've been inside of here with such ready access to all these goodies. So it's kind of nice to be able to see what you're doing real nicely. So like these LED wires and stuff, we did a pretty good job of getting those back where they were going to be secured and everything. But at this point, if we wanted to, we could probably tidy those up a bit too. And it may end up making better sense in the long run to just cut all the tape and let this spin around all the way, because it seems like it's going to be pretty good. But I haven't decided that yet, because like I said, this is about the first time I've worked on it open like this. Okay, so now that it's all opened, let's make a decision about which direction the servo is going to need to sit. Okay, so these wires, I think since they're, they're LED lights, they are critical, but they're not necessarily critical to the same extent as the power to the second receiver, okay? So I have to make a value judgment on what's more important and what's going to get protection from me, okay? So I'm going to pull this back for now, and I'm just going to very carefully work this out. See how much extra there is, guys? We could totally pull power off of this. That might be the thing to do, guys. Right here, now that we have good access to it all. Instead of dealing with going into these little connectors and things, I can leave that connector there for, later on if they would ever, God forbid, add the programming function. The other thing I can do now is I can go ahead and tidy up these wires. These wires just kind of drive me nuts. I don't usually open planes until I absolutely have to. Once I do, then I get in there whenever I need to. Okay, and then this tape, it's no longer holding the wires, so I'm going to try to fix that while I'm at it. Okay, cool. It's actually pretty tidy considering it's a UMX. They're usually not very tidy. So I'm really happy about that. That's cool. Good job, Verizon. The other thing is I need to be mindful to keep things from touching here. So let's just get a spatial awareness of how much room we're going to need. Obviously, this antenna is ridiculous for this application. So, okay, so the servo, or excuse me, the linkages are going to come in here, and they're going to need to flop up and down, okay? Which is probably not the best place since we're going to have these control rods going to the back. And so I need to be mindful of that. I also need to be mindful of this wire, which, to be honest with you, I could take and I could glue it. I could spot it in here with CA or a piece of tape. You know what? The piece of tape, that's a great idea. We're doing that right now. Now, obviously, with all the weight savings in mind, you want to keep your tape as tidy as possible so that you can get the most effectiveness. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't tape things. Tape is much lighter than other potential methods. But you do need to keep in mind that it bears some load, so you gotta keep it down as much as you can. Now I'm gonna put another piece of tape right here to hold that nice and tidy. This is one of those times when it's really hard to reach where I want to be. So I'm going to take my second blade, stick it to the tip of the X-Acto knife like this. And then I can use my second hand to manipulate where the wire goes. Beautiful. That worked halfway decent. Wasn't perfect, but it worked a little better than not having a tool. Okay, so that'll at least give me some level of protection on that wire. And there's a bump here. And I have to assume that that bump is somewhere where they maybe are housing like a carbon fiber strip or rod or something like that. Looking at the way that this receiver could sit, we have power up here. And all I need to do is just pull power before I get to the resistors, and it's going to be identical power to any of the other tap points. Now, if I pull it after the resistors, that would be a problem. So that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm just thinking that's probably the way to go. Worst case scenario, I could clip this and then reorganize the wire too. Although I could just also unplug that and reorganize it too. And as much as I like the idea of having the receiver mounted on top of this, I don't know if that's going to work. Just for the simple fact that I've got so much crap going on here, I'm afraid I'm going to run out of real estate. I got to think. I'll definitely save on this wire though. This is the way I would like it to be. So why don't we just we're just going to tape it so that we're going to practice the commitment to this position. Okay? And as soon as we know this, then we can go ahead and start making longer term decisions about where things are going to sit and how they're going to operate and how long the leads need to be and such and such. Now the other thing I just totally thought of is I'm going to be pulling power off of this board from this wire. So I could hypothetically tap power and then continue out to wherever I need to plug it in. That's one other option we can do. Okay, power's on. Throttle cut is on. And obviously you want to kind of load the plane as evenly as possible, but you've got other factors to consider here as well, namely the fact that we've got all this other schmutz up here. And look where this is going to pivot. It's going to pivot over here. You've got this linkage that lifts up high and goes out forward to the nose wheel. Can't go that way. It's just not safe. It's not going to be a sure thing. So it's going to have to probably ride up against the side here, which is going to put more weight on, well, whatever this side is. I don't like that. Let's see if I can figure out a way to get away from that. Maybe I can go at an angle like this. I don't know if I can get lucky to do that. Okay, so this is why I don't have the pins off of here yet, so I can do this practice work. We're going to patch power in, and then we're going to plug this in. Okay. So now we can plug in our power, which in this case is going to be this 3S pack. Not that it matters. It really doesn't. I just need to know how things are going to spatially lay out. And I mean, I can rotate the direction of travel on the servo. That part's super easy. But I can't necessarily rotate which way I need the flaps to go. Okay. So that's totally free. The whole throw is free. It's not running into anything at all, which is super handy. And if I have this centered, I guess technically the weight is centered right now. So if I can just get my mechanical linkages, so like this side's going to be longer. This side over here is going to be longer, which would be the left wing, and this would be the right wing. So I really don't care if that linkage is longer. They just need to free all the other mechanisms. And I'm going to have another control on there as well. And these diversity antennas, I don't even care if they're lined up squarely. Because let's just get practical. We got a gigantic antenna on this thing. Could even stick the antenna out if I wanted. Okay, great. So that tells me for sure that this is the direction I want it to be. And I'm okay with this direction. And I'm willing to now commit to that position. So now we can start desoldering stuff, which means we don't need the plane in the way necessarily as we do this, but it's not really probably going to be a big deal either. So we know where this needs to be. Let's go ahead and get some double-sided tape going. We're not going to need this on. I take it back. We're not going to do the double-sided tape until we have this soldering done. Alright, thinking out loud for a second. If I'm tapping these two wires, the red and the brown need to go to the white and black over here. And obviously black will be negative in this condition, and white will be positive. So, if I strip the wire back just a little bit and fold it and make like a little nub, I can stick the nub into there and then keep the wire, thus giving me something to work with. I wonder if I should just go ahead and go that route. I no longer need these pins. These pins are irrelevant at this point. And all I'm going to do is keep the bind plug intact. And when I say bind plug, I'm going to keep one pin intact. Let's just get it done. So we know which way we want that to be. So now I can go ahead and grab onto the pin that I'm going to remove next. And now I can let the weight of the tool, hypothetically, do the pulling for me. Clean the tip, clean the tip. Let's get a little solder. Yes, very good. Okay, so guys, I was just going to talk to you real quick while we're working on some more tedious crap that's not very fun to watch. And that is, you know me, I don't do a lot of editing and cutting on my videos. And okay, I gotta pause for a second and think. I need to get power in here somewhere. If I tap power, yep, that's what I want. I'm gonna take all 3 of these pins out. I can always add them back if I really need to. Okay, so back to my side commentary. You know me, I don't do a lot of, boy, those are a lot easier to take out now that those header black thingies are out of there. Maybe that's the way to do it. Well, that's what I tried, if I recall. See how easy they're coming out? This is taking like no time. They're just coming out super duper easy, guys. And it's like way cleaner. I've got more room to work, more confidence in what I'm doing at this exact juncture, so there's an explanation for it. Okay, so now we need to, I say, let's just take the things out. Let's just take them out. We'll leave the signal pin, and we'll take out the power pins. Get out of there. See what happened, guys? I tried to get greedy and do 2 at once, and it screwed me over. It's probably easier to just do 1 at a time and be done with it. And it's a more sure thing. So that's what I'm going to do from now on this video until I forget for the next video. Oh, and don't worry, we'll weigh this thing up again so you can see how much weight savings we have. Because remember, this thing was just under 9 grams when we started. I guarantee it's a lot less than that now. Jeez. Oh, so my question was, or not question, but just in passing, is that you know I don't do a lot of editing. And YouTube took away the editor that was built in, and I was just wondering what you guys use. I have this program called FFmpeg where I can combine videos, but that's about all I get into right now, because that's all I ever really want to do. But you know, you get your, you know, more production style videos like from Rami RC, which he just does some awesome work. I love watching his videos. But the thing is, his, you know, you're not going to do a how-to build 777 and down to this level. It's just you can't show all those steps because he's working for weeks. I can, and I will on my projects. So I need to clean these holes because these holes are where I'm going to tap power, guys. That's warm. Okay, sometimes when you're trying to clean holes, it's actually easier to put fresh solder in and then take it out as a group. Okay, so we're just going to get some fresh solder there. Get some flux and all that good stuff in there. So now we're just going to pull this out like this. Just going to walk back and forth real briefly. Don't linger, you'll ruin stuff. You do kind of need to have clean clean wick or it's not going to get much solder out. Okay, so now, did we leave the right pins in there? I think I did. Now that it's so mutilated, it's hard to remember, but I could look at the video, except that I'm still currently filming. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to let that cool for just a second, because it's crazy warm. I'm beginning to think this is one of those steps where I'm going to look back and think, why did I do this to myself? I didn't have to do it that way. Man, that is really vulnerable right there, because it's not in a case anymore. I'm going to just immediately jump over to this. Sorry guys to jump around like this, but I've got to protect this antenna. This is the one I care about. I don't really care about the other one. I don't know if I should, but honestly they look like they're both going to be fairly strong once I get them reinforced here. Okay, good enough. Now I can move back on to what I was doing. Sorry about the side note there. Okay, so let's reevaluate for positions. So now the bind plug, we can still use the bind plug, as you can see here. And if I were to attempt to energize this with my external ESC, I'd have a heck of a time because I have nowhere to plug in my power. Okay? So that was all intentional. In fact, I'm going to get these pins put away. I almost forgot to weigh this, guys. That's amazing. 3.8 grams. That is awesome. I gotta write that down. Now it's 3.8 grams. So that was a savings of a lot. 5.15 grams saved. That is so crazy. Just think about it, guys. That's the entire servo, almost. And our servo is down quite a bit too. You could make it lighter if you wanted to. Oh yeah, way stronger too. The antenna right there is way stronger now. Alright, so let's just mark these real quick with power and ground. So obviously the ground is on the outside because you're shorting ground to signal when you do your bind. So I'm just going to mark red, red, red. And you're thinking, well, Brian, you're only going to hook up one. Yeah, but this will just give us a little bit more emphasis, so it's not so questionable. And then I'm going to take the black, and I'm going to mark it black. Black, 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 black. Okay? So that way there's less confusion later on. The other thing we can do is, regrettably, I'm not going to need probably to bind this anytime soon, but I think it would be wise to take a bind plug and determine how much of this we can lose. Because look, we're making contact there, so I can cut off, geez, close to 1/4 inch probably. Well, I can't believe I'm even thinking about doing this with these cutting tools, but yep, just did it. It's actually not too bad. Okay, so we're going to let that... Oh yeah, that works great, guys. We still have a perfect amount of bite, and yet we saved some more weight. Okay, now same on the other ones. There's no sense in having those short and these long. Okay. Now, why did I do the pins for the signal? Because I have 2 available channels in this configuration, so I want to at least keep those 2 open. Okay? Even though I'm probably just going to end up soldering the crap anyway. In fact, let's separate these wires right now. So we just take and grab and pull it back. We want to be careful not to get into the cabinet here. And in fact, I'm going to do just a little bit of a strain relief here. Strain relief meaning we're taking the stress off the cables themselves, because you don't want to bear any sort of mechanical strength across the wires as much as you can avoid. Trust me, it will pay dividends if you do things like that. My crashes are strictly from me running into things. Just a hilarious joke, guys. I have equipment failures too. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and take and stick this down temporarily. I could hypothetically put my double-sided tape on there and just go to town, but it's going to be harder to solder right now if I do that. So now I can get my length for the first solder spot, which I think I should just give myself a little bit of room because I've already saved a crap load of weight here. And I think I should just do about like that. Okay, so I'm going to take and strip off some of this wire. So just pulling that back, I'm actually not even going to technically strip anything. I'm just pulling it apart. I got one little cut in there. Okay, see that? And then I can spin the wire to make it more presentable, palatable. Okay, just like so. Now I can concentrate on trying to solder that in there, into that little socket there. I think at this point I don't have any other choice. I got to do the double-sided tape at this point. So let's get some double-sided tape and alcohol. Q-tip, alcohol. Guys, we're getting close to the end of this video. We're about 3 or 4 minutes away from the end of this installment, which would be part 3. And it's always scary for me because I don't want to accidentally overshoot and then miss a vital step. I work really hard to try to avoid that, but my equipment's kind of shoddy. So until my equipment is no longer shoddy, that's going to keep happening. And don't worry, I'm not asking for money on Patreon or anything like that yet. Okay, so we know which way this goes now. We're going to clean this real good. Gosh, I hope we have enough headroom when we're done with this. Oh man, is there even a way to be 100% sure? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm just thinking out loud here. I think we're going to have enough headroom. Ooh, but I just thought of something, guys. I'm glad we haven't soldered everything together yet. Because remember, this is going to flip over. And then this needs to really be over here. Let's just double check real quick. Let's double check if we can get away with doing that still. I think we have plenty of room there. We should still be able to do that. And we'll just do it exactly the same way. The only difference is we'll have to reverse the servo. That I can totally live with. Reversing the servo, no big deal. Okay. So same thing. We'll just reverse the servo before we put it in there. Now I am going to take an Aero. I'm going to draw on here real quick. Might as well clean both sides. So I'm going to draw on here an arrow that says like front. Like toward the front of the plane. And then I really don't care which way this goes. It doesn't matter. It's not a stabilizer. So now this black wire, this brown wire in this case, let's get that stripped back while we're at it. Let that alcohol dry for a second. Okay, so we'll just pull that back, give us about the same amount. Now you don't want to tin that unless you absolutely have to, because it always makes it easier to soak up the solder when it's fresh and clean. Okay, so we got 3M tape here. Stuff is super duper light. Hold this up as our gauge. Now remember, we know which way this is going to move back and forth, okay? So I want to put this on here and be as sparing as I can. I don't want a bunch of extra tape on here because this tape is not light compared to just conventional tape. Okay, push it on hard, and then let's get this thing stuck down. Gosh, I'm just nervous I'm going to end up sticking this down and I'm immediately have problems with placement. or getting those wires soldered in there. So why don't I just be patient for a second, which is something I struggle with a lot, and try to get these soldered in potentially first. I just don't know if it's going to be easier or not. Now the other thing too to keep in mind is that this is behind the center of gravity, which I do not like. Oh gosh, that's not good at all, guys. We really need this thing to be in front of the center of gravity. Because look, we have this that weighs 3, and we have this that weighs 6.8 now. And really, I need this to be back here and this to be up here. And we're still going to move CG back a little bit. Like I said, we may need to move the battery, which is not a big deal. But now, before I get too excited about this, we may need to put it up here if we can. Because then that's like right on the CG. It's a CG. That would give us more headroom. But I wouldn't be flying with the bigger packs either. I think we're just going to have to do this. I want it to be this way. I like the idea of the modular setup. Guys, we're out of time. This is part 3. Flaps on the aerocommander. UMX. Come back for more, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.